What's going on YouTube? JT's here, and welcome back to another edition of After the Movie. So, for this video here, I'm going to guarantee you that 99.99% of you have never seen or heard of this movie. Aside from the one person who requested that would be Big Jack Films. So, Jack, here you go. Here's the video that you asked me to do, and I'm following through on my promise, which means now you've got to follow through on your promise to talk about King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the film known as Zorro. It's from 1975. It stars Lane Delon, or however you pronounce the guy's name. I'm sure I'll butcher it somehow, as Diego/Zorro. I can't remember Zorro's last name because I'm going to be honest. I've never watched a Zorro movie until I watched this one for the first time. I've heard of the Antonio Banderas one and its sequel, but I've never really seen much else when it comes to Zorro. I have kind of a rough idea. I know he has the sword and crosses the Z. I know he's got the hat. I know he wears all black. I know he was partially responsible for inspiring Batman. So in a lot of ways, Zorro is kind of the very first superhero of all time. So yes, all this cape stuff that you see here, partially inspired by Zorro in some way, shape, or form. Like influenced by it, per se. Like Zorro's creation in turn inspired Batman. I think even like in the comic books, you'd see Batman was with his parents and he ultimately went to see some sort of Zorro movie, because Zorro's been around for I think over 100 years at this point. So this movie is kind of based on something along the lines, whatever the original source material is. Again, I'm somebody who really has no clue exactly who the character of Zorro is, like his background and backstory and all that. I just kind of have a rough idea. Like he's a guy, he fights with a sword, he wears a little costume, and he tries to bring justice to wherever he's at. That's kind of the gist of it. But this movie, Zorro, 1975, it's a mess. It's a big mess, and a lot of it's really disjointed. A lot of it doesn't quite add up. I feel like I'm missing a movie when I watch this thing. It kind of reminds me a bit, or I'll say this. I feel like there's so much that was cut from this movie, at least the version that I saw. Again, it was kind of like it was like the English version. I'll leave a link in the description below for you all to check it out if you feel like it. But like as soon as the movie begins, I'm like, okay, so as somebody who doesn't really know who Zorro is going into this movie, I was kind of lost. I'm like, I don't really know the history, so I can't really fill in the gaps. But I don't really understand like how it gets from here where he's at the beginning of the movie to kind of where he is at the end, because all of a sudden, just randomly in the middle of the movie, he's just like, oh, he's with some kids, and they're like, oh, that's the mark of Zorro or whatever. He's like, oh, Zorro, huh? And then just randomly, like another scene later, he's got the full get up and costume. Like, was he Zorro like the whole time? Was he inspired by these kids? Again, I feel like I'm missing a movie when this thing starts, because it's just really disjointed, especially the way it's been edited. It kind of goes all over the place. 1 minute it jumps here, 1 minute it jumps there. It's cut here. There's some bad ADR for sure. I mean, even the dog's ADR, for crying out loud, the dog sounds like a person like barking for the dog, which like instead of like having the dog bark or anything, they have like somebody dub over like the dog's barking. And it's like roof, roof, right now. It just seems so incredibly out of place. And again, a lot of the comedy I didn't really find all that funny. And in fact, I found it kind of insufferable at times. And yeah, like I said, I don't know his background. I don't really know the background of the townsfolk. There's really not much in the way of character development. Now, some of the good things I can say about this movie, the main actor who does play Zorro, he is pretty good. Like, he's pulling off kind of a dual role. Because, like, at the beginning of the movie, he goes to visit his friend who is a governor. And his governor, he gets assassinated because some other corrupt person in another town or, like, territory got him assassinated, basically. So, Zorro decides to disguise himself as the governor. And he goes and just kind of tried to find a way to bring his own justice to the town, take down the corrupt general, I believe it is, and you get the movie from there. So Zorro goes off doing his own thing. Eventually he puts on the getup in a way that really didn't kind of make sense to me. It's kind of just like one scene later, he's just like, oh, I'm Zorro, I got this. I'm like, where'd you get the costume? Where'd you get the hat? Were you already Zorro this whole time? Again, it's, like I said, the way it's edited and put together, it feels like I'm missing a lot of movie. Like, things will just kind of jump cut to, like, random tonal shifts. They'll try and have some comedy added in. The KKK shows up for a second, but it's not really them. Like, they have the same getup as that. I'm like, they're dressed like the KKK, but they're not the KKK. They shouldn't have been around at that time. Again, I was really confused by what was going on in this movie. And really for the first, like, because this is like a 2-hour movie, like, up until like the last 15 minutes, I'm just kind of sitting there. I'm like, well, I think the main actor's good, but like everything else around him like is falling pretty flat. Like the supporting characters, if you can call them that, because there's really no sense of development to them at all. Nothing that makes them interesting. We don't really understand too many motivations. Again, this is a spaghetti western, but it really doesn't hold up by today's like modern standards. Like this movie get ripped apart. Like I said, the movie is edited in such a way that it feels really disjointed, like I'm missing something. I'll give an example compared to something kind of today. Like I'll go comic book comparisons. Like look at the movie Batman vs Superman. Look at the theatrical cut versus like the Ultimate Edition. There's a lot in Batman vs Superman that feels like it's been like trimmed out and like is completely missing, to where like things don't make sense necessarily. Like in the theatrical edition, for instance, of BVS, you see that whole fiasco in the desert, which Superman gets blamed for the crimes. You're like, okay, this doesn't make sense. Why would Superman get blamed for somebody firing bullets? Then you go to the Ultimate Edition, and you see that they were actually like torching bodies and stuff like that, to where you can add up like, oh, okay, now that kind of makes a little bit more sense now. That's kind of like the way it is with this movie. I feel like I'm missing like another movie or a story, but this is like a standalone movie. It's not necessarily a sequel to anything. You have to go with this as the start of its own little series, but to my knowledge, there's no sequel or anything like that. It's just like a standalone adventure with the character of Zorro, who I'm not all that familiar with, so I'm kind of lost. If you're going to do a movie like this, I feel like you have to kind of introduce the character to the audiences. Again, I know like everyone has to start somewhere, and I know, like compared to something like today, whereas Batman's been kind of ingrained into pop culture, Zorro, I guess he was at the time, but like for me, I needed like an intro. I needed an origin. I needed to understand Zorro, like why he is the way he is. Where does he come from? Or just something. I needed some background on this movie before going into it, because like I said, I was kind of lost. I didn't understand too much of what was happening. Well, I mean, I could get some stuff. Like I can understand, okay, he's gonna disguise himself to take down like this corrupt general or whatever, and he's trying to bring justice to like these people and kind of free them a bit, or something along the lines of that. I don't know. It just, like I said, it's a disjointed kind of mess with like some really bad comedy and just some other performances that aren't up to par with the main actor. Like I said, the main actor is quite good, but like everything else around it, it's just kind of laughably bad and definitely dated. So, are there any redeeming factors to this movie? Yes, I will say this. This is a 2-hour movie. Up until like the last 15 minutes of this movie, I'm not really feeling this thing at all. Like I said, it's a disjointed mess. The action sequences and sword fighting are just pretty mediocre. Then we get to the final confrontation between Zorro and the final bad guy. Like, okay, let's go see how this sword fight really is. And I gotta tell you, the final sword fight is one of the best in movie history. This final battle, it's a long fight too. It's not a quick 5-minute thing. It goes on for almost 15 minutes. And like the choreography and all the sword fighting and everything between these two actors, there's no music or anything, just the way that it's like the movie just like they spent all the time on the final battle, like everything else is just, it's like they just wanted to film the final battle the way it is, and like everything else is just kind of mediocre stuff just to get to the final battle. And the final sword fight between Zorro and the bad guy, as I call him, because he really doesn't have much in the way of personality, is nothing all that memorable, is fantastic. Like, this is one of the longest sword fights in movie history, and it's really good. Like, they're going here, battling here, and I'm like, wow, I'm actually getting really into this movie. It's quite exciting. I'm like, this is great. If the whole movie was like this, I might actually recommend seeing it, but I don't really recommend sitting through this whole movie. If you get the chance to watch it, just skip to the final battle. Like, honestly, everything else beforehand, not very good. Final battle, really good. It's like, how do we get from there to here? It's like we have just this really kind of crappy, like, disjointed movie with one of the most awesome final sword fights in history. Like I said, the choreography, the way the camera's shot, the way they go back and forth, it's all like real on-set location stuff. It's very exciting. And like I said, if you're going to watch this movie, just watch the final battle is so good. The final sword fight, that is. But like everything else before it, it's just pretty shitty. So I don't know. I'm kind of a mixed bag on this thing. I don't think I'll ever go back and watch this movie again, but I think I'll probably go back and watch the final sword fight. Because like I said, the final sword fight between Zorro and the bad guy, again, I can't really remember anyone's name because nobody's all that memorable in this movie, is really, really good. If you have to watch it, like I said, I left a link in the description below. It's the whole movie. Like I said, it's a disjointed mess of a movie. It's not going to be for everyone. But if you get the chance to, check out the final sword fight battle. And even kind of when it's done, the movie just kind of just like wraps up rather quickly. And then we're just kind of left on kind of an ambiguous ending. We're like, okay, is Zorro going to hook up with this girl? He just kind of rides off into the sunset. And then I guess that's the last we see of him until they make more Zorro movies, which aren't in a continuity with this thing, just kind of other standalone Zorro stuff. So overall, I didn't really like this movie aside from the final sword fight. So it's kind of a weird thing with this thing. Like like I said, I really didn't care for it, and I thought it was a mess and not very good up until the final battle. So there you go. I wouldn't recommend watching this thing. Just skip to the last 15 minutes. If you watch the last 15 minutes and nothing else, you get a pretty good fight scene. That's what it all comes down to. This movie has a really good final fight scene. Everything else, yeah. So, and it has like this somewhat catchy Zorro song. It's like do 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 da 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 da. Zorro's back. So, as my first kind of real like introduction to Zorro, in the sense that it's the first time I've actually sat down and watched the Zorro movie. There's definitely potential here. I gotta check out the Anthony Hopkins, Antonio Banderas, Catherine Zeta-Jones movie. But with this one, I'd say skip it. It's not worth your time, aside from the final battle. So, yeah, that's it. Those are my thoughts on Zorro from 1975, I think it was now. Again, I'm kind of forgetting a lot of stuff that happens. But like I said, I left a link in the description below for everyone to check out. Skip to the final sword fight. I don't think you'll be disappointed, because I think that's really, really good. But everything else, nah, definitely not for me. So, yep, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you all so much for watching it. I really appreciate everybody checking this out. I got some more content coming up soon. And when that time comes, I will post it. So, yeah, I got some more of the DC comic book reviews. Definitely got the next JT's Born written review coming up sometime soon. And part 2 of that video I have promised. So that's it. And some more live streams or whatever we get the chance to talk about and stuff like that. So yeah, there's more stuff coming along the ways. I'll get to it when I get to it. I haven't forgotten about everybody. I'm ready to get back and doing some more content. This was a good start. So, yep, that's all I got to say. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Jack, I hope you enjoyed the video, because this was at your request that somebody talk about Zorro from 1975. I know you're a big Zorro fan. So everyone go check out Big Jack Films YouTube channel. He does some amazing content, big supporter of the channel. And yeah, so that's that. I'll see you guys next time on After the Movie, or whatever video I decide to do next. So yep, as always, thank you all so much for watching this. Take care now. Bye-bye then, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace out. I wish I could have the Zorro sword and just go. That'd be kind of cool. All right, bye-bye.